the feather of forgiveness. In the gentle winds of Galilee, a single feather carried an ancient truth. Could one small act of forgiveness change everything? On a gentle afternoon in the hills of Galilee, Jesus and his disciples gathered under the shade of an ancient olive tree. The sun cast a warm golden hue over the landscape, and the air was filled with the soft rustle of leaves and the distant laughter of children playing. However, the mood among the disciples was heavy, clouded by unresolved conflicts and emotional wounds. As they argued among themselves, voices rising in frustration, Jesus observed their troubled faces. His heart ached for them, knowing the burden they carried. He rose quietly, sensing that a lesson was needed, and looked towards the horizon. Spotting a single feather drifting gracefully in the breeze, its lightness and elegance sparked an idea. He motioned for the disciples to follow him, leading them to a small clearing where the feather had gently settled on the ground. "Look closely at this feather," he said, kneeling down to pick it up. The disciples gathered around him, their curiosity piqued. "What do you see?" One disciple, Peter, spoke up, "It's just a feather, Lord. What does it matter?" Jesus smiled softly, sensing the potential for revelation. "It matters more than you think. This feather represents forgiveness." The disciples exchanged confused glances, unsure of how a simple feather could symbolize such a profound concept. Jesus continued, "Forgiveness is like this feather. It is light and free. When we hold on to anger and resentment, we become heavy and burdened, just as a rock sinks in water." To illustrate his point, Jesus took a deep breath and tossed the feather into the air. They watched as it danced with the wind, twirling and gliding effortlessly. "See how it moves? When we forgive, we let go of the weight that drags us down. We allow ourselves to be carried by the winds of love and grace." Then he shared a parable. Once there was a man who owned a beautiful garden. One day he discovered that someone had trampled on his flowers, leaving behind a mess of wilted petals and broken stems. Anger consumed him, and he spent his days lamenting the loss. His garden, once a place of beauty, became a dark reminder of betrayal. But one day he noticed a single flower still standing tall amidst the destruction. Instead of focusing on the ruined plants, he decided to nurture that flower. With love and care, it blossomed more brilliantly than he had ever seen. Jesus paused, letting the story sink in. The disciples were entranced, feeling the warmth of hope radiating from the tale. The man learned that holding on to his anger only brought him more pain. By forgiving the transgressor, he freed himself and found beauty again in his garden. Forgiveness became his healing. Thomas, one of the disciples, looked thoughtful. "But what if the person who hurt us doesn't ask for forgiveness?" Jesus replied gently, "Forgiveness is not about the other person. It is about freeing yourself. When we forgive, we release ourselves from the chains of bitterness and open our hearts to joy once more. Like this feather, we must be willing to float above our grievances." A soft wind began to blow, lifting the feather into the air once more. The disciples watched, mesmerized by its lightness. As they stood in silence, the gentle breeze wrapped around them, carrying with it the scent of blooming wildflowers. Then a young woman, one of the disciples named Miriam, stepped forward, her voice trembling. "Lord, I have held on to anger for so long. My heart feels heavy with pain from past betrayals. How do I let go?" Jesus looked into her eyes, seeing the turmoil within her. "Imagine your anger as a stone you carry in your pocket. Every time you feel its weight, remember the feather. Visualize it floating away, taking with it your burdens. Forgiveness is not forgetting. It is a choice to live without the pain that drags you down. It is to acknowledge your hurt but not allow it to define you. In doing so, you will find the strength to soar." Tears welled up in Miriam's eyes, and she nodded slowly, understanding blooming in her heart. The other disciples felt a wave of emotion wash over them, their hearts lightening as they contemplated the power of forgiveness. Jesus' words struck a chord, resonating deep within their souls, awakening a desire for healing. Jesus continued, "Forgiveness doesn't mean we condone the wrongs done to us. It means we release the hold those wrongs have on our hearts. By forgiving, we reclaim our peace. Think of the feather. It doesn't bear the weight of the world. It simply exists in its lightness, embracing the freedom of the wind." As the sun began to set, casting a warm glow across the valley, Jesus gathered his disciples close. "Remember, forgiveness is a gift you give yourself. It is light and liberating like this feather. When you choose to forgive, you free your heart and spirit to love deeply, to connect with others authentically, and to find peace within. Let go of your burdens and allow your soul to dance in the wind." With those final words, Jesus released the feather into the sky once more. As it floated away, the disciples felt an overwhelming sense of joy and liberation. They watched it disappear into the horizon, realizing that they too could rise above their pain and find healing in the act of forgiveness. The burden of resentment began to lift, replaced by a newfound lightness of being, filling their hearts with hope and love. As they began to disperse, one disciple, James, hesitated. "But what if I struggle to forgive even after hearing this?" Jesus looked at him compassionately. "It is normal to struggle, James. Forgiveness is a journey, not a destination. Sometimes it takes time to heal. You may need to forgive many times, each time bringing you closer to freedom. Remember, it is not about perfection, it is about progress." The disciples nodded, feeling encouraged. They understood that the path of forgiveness was not always easy but was essential for their spiritual growth. Miriam, inspired by Jesus' words, took a deep breath and said, "I think I'm ready to forgive the person who hurt me. It won't be easy, but I want to be free." Her determination sparked a ripple of resolution among the other disciples. One by one, they began to share their own struggles with forgiveness, creating an atmosphere of vulnerability and support. Judas, who had often felt alienated due to his choices, spoke up. "I have made mistakes that hurt others. I need to forgive myself as well." Forgiving yourself is one of the hardest but most crucial parts of this journey, Jesus affirmed. Self-forgiveness opens the door to healing and allows you to extend that grace to others. As the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky with hues of orange and purple, the disciples found solace in their shared struggles. They began to express their intentions to forgive those who had wronged them, the weight of resentment lifting with each declaration. In that sacred moment, they formed a circle, joining hands and prayed together, asking for strength and courage to embrace forgiveness. The air felt charged with a sense of renewal, the feather in their hearts lifting higher with every prayer. Then, as they prayed, the winds picked up, swirling around them in a gentle embrace. They could hear the whispers of nature, as if the world itself was affirming their commitment to forgive. Each disciple felt a profound connection, not only to one another but to the essence of love that Jesus embodied. Suddenly, a little boy, a child from a nearby village, appeared at the edge of the clearing, holding another feather he had found. His bright eyes sparkled with innocence as he approached Jesus. "Look, Master, I found this feather. Can it fly like the one you showed us?" Jesus knelt down, his heart warmed by the boy's presence. "Yes, my young friend. This feather can also fly. Just like the act of forgiveness can take us to new heights." The boy tilted his head, pondering the words. "Can you teach me how to make it fly?" With a gentle smile, Jesus took the boy's small hand and led him to the center of the circle where the disciples stood. "To make it fly, you must release it into the air with joy, just like we release our burdens through forgiveness." With the boy's innocent laughter ringing in their ears, Jesus guided him in a playful demonstration. They all watched as the boy tossed the feather into the sky, giggling as it danced among the clouds, a reminder of the freedom that forgiveness brings. The disciples clapped, their spirits lifted by the child's joy. They felt a renewed sense of purpose as they reflected on the significance of the moment. Jesus turned to the boy and said, "You see, my dear friend, every time we forgive, we send our pain away, allowing joy to fill the space once occupied by hurt. Just like this feather, we too can soar. Miriam, inspired by the scene, looked at her fellow disciples and said, I want to be like that feather. I want to let go of everything that weighs me down. As the stars began to twinkle in the darkening sky, the group shared stories of forgiveness, recounting times when they had felt wronged and how they could release that pain. Each story was a stepping stone toward healing, drawing them closer to one another and to the heart of their faith. Then a thought crossed James's mind. But what if I forgive and they hurt me again? What then? Jesus nodded thoughtfully. Forgiveness doesn't mean you allow someone to hurt you repeatedly. It is about freeing yourself from the cycle of anger. You can forgive and still set healthy boundaries. Just as the feather is free to float, so too can you create space for peace while protecting your heart. As the discussion deepened, they realized that forgiveness was not a one-time act but an ongoing journey, one they would support each other through. The disciples pledged to hold each other accountable, to encourage one another in their struggles, and to celebrate each small victory along the way. When the moon rose high in the sky, casting a silvery glow over the landscape, Jesus gathered the disciples once more. Tonight, you have taken a powerful step forward. You have chosen to embrace forgiveness, a gift that will transform your lives. Remember, it is not just a feather floating away, it is a rebirth of your spirit. Each time you forgive, you reclaim your joy and your freedom. As the night wore on, laughter filled the air as they shared stories and dreams. The burden of their pasts lifted, replaced by a sense of hope and camaraderie. The feather had served its purpose, becoming a symbol of their newfound freedom and connection. The little boy, still buzzing with excitement, looked up at Jesus. Master, can I keep this feather? Jesus chuckled softly, Of course, my friend. You may keep it as a reminder that forgiveness is a gift you can share with others. Each time you see it, let it inspire you to be a bearer of peace and love. The boy grinned widely, clutching the feather tightly. I will show everyone in my village how to let go and be free. The disciples smiled at the boy's enthusiasm. They realized that forgiveness was not just a personal journey, it had the power to influence entire communities. Each disciple felt inspired to carry the message of forgiveness beyond their circle, to share it with those they encountered in their daily lives. As the night grew deeper, Jesus spoke again. Remember that forgiveness is not just a passive act. It requires strength and courage. It is about embracing vulnerability, acknowledging pain, and choosing love over hate. Judas, feeling a surge of determination, added, I want to forgive those who have wronged me, but I also want to make amends with those I have hurt. How can I do that? Jesus looked at him with compassion. That is an important step, Judas. To forgive is to heal, but to make amends requires action. Seek out those you have hurt and offer them your sincere apologies. Acknowledge your mistakes and let them know you wish to grow from them. This is how you can embody forgiveness in both directions. Judas nodded, feeling a weight lifted from his shoulders. He had often felt the burden of guilt for his actions, but now he saw a path forward. As the disciples prepared to leave the clearing, Jesus asked each one to commit to a small act of forgiveness that week. Let this be your challenge, he said. Identify someone you need to forgive, whether it's a friend, a family member, or even yourself. Reach out and take that step towards freedom. Miriam stepped forward, her eyes shining with determination. I will reach out to my brother. We haven't spoken in years because of a misunderstanding. I will seek to mend that bond. That's wonderful, Miriam, Jesus replied, beaming with pride. Your bravery will inspire others. James spoke next. I want to write a letter to my former teacher, who was harsh with me. I will thank her for the lessons learned and forgive her for the pain I felt. That is a beautiful gesture, Jesus encouraged. Words have the power to heal wounds that time cannot erase. One by one, the disciples shared their commitments, each promising to take a step toward forgiveness. Their hearts swelled with hope as they discussed how they would approach those they had distanced themselves from. Finally, as the night deepened and the stars twinkled brightly above them, Jesus looked at his disciples with love. You have taken a significant step tonight. Forgiveness can change not only your lives but also the lives of those around you. It has the power to create ripples of peace, compassion, and understanding in the world. With that, they prepared to depart. The disciples, buoyed by their shared intentions, walked together under the moonlit sky, their hearts light and filled with purpose. The following days were filled with anticipation and reflection. Each disciple set out to fulfill their promise, facing their fears and taking bold steps toward forgiveness. They shared their experiences with one another, celebrating victories and supporting each other through challenges. Miriam's heart raced as she approached her brother's home. Memories flooded her mind, childhood laughter, shared secrets, and the warmth of family ties. Yet, the hurt from their last encounter loomed large. Taking a deep breath, she knocked on the door, her palms sweaty but her heart resolute. When her brother opened the door, surprise washed over his face. "Miriam," he said hesitantly, "what brings you here?" "I came to talk," she replied, her voice steady despite her nerves. "I want to apologize for how I reacted last time we spoke. I've been holding on to anger, but I realize now it's time to forgive. I miss you." Her brother's expression softened and tears filled his eyes. "I've missed you too. I'm sorry for my part in the argument. Can we start anew?" With that, they embraced, their bond rekindled by the act of forgiveness. The burden that had weighed them down for so long lifted, and in its place bloomed a renewed love. Meanwhile, James penned his letter with care, pouring out his heart onto the parchment. He expressed gratitude for the lessons learned under his teacher's guidance and offered forgiveness for the pain he had endured. As he sealed the envelope, he felt a weight lift from his shoulders, a sense of liberation washing over him. The ripple effects of their commitments began to spread. The disciples shared their experiences with the communities they encountered, igniting conversations about forgiveness and its transformative power. The townspeople listened intently, inspired by the disciples' courage to confront their pasts. Judas too sought to make amends. He approached those he had wronged, seeking forgiveness for the pain he had caused. Each encounter was difficult but necessary. He learned that humility and vulnerability were essential components of true forgiveness, both giving and receiving. As the days turned into weeks, the disciples gathered again under the olive tree, this time with a sense of excitement and renewal. They shared stories of their experiences, their laughter mingling with the whispers of the wind. Miriam spoke first, her voice filled with joy. "I reconciled with my brother. We've started spending time together again, and it feels like a weight has been lifted from my heart." James chimed in, "I sent my letter and my teacher wrote back. She expressed her gratitude for my kindness, and it helped me understand her struggles as well. We've begun to communicate more openly." Judas too shared his journey. "I faced my fears and apologized to those I had hurt." The relief in their eyes was worth every ounce of courage it took to approach them. "I feel like a new man." As they shared their victories, the air buzzed with energy and inspiration. Jesus listened, his heart swelling with pride for his disciples. "You have all taken significant steps toward healing. You are living embodiments of the message of forgiveness, spreading its wings like the feathers that floated away from your hands." But then Jesus turned serious, addressing a more profound truth. Forgiveness is not always easy. There will be times when the wounds seem too deep or the memories too painful. In those moments, remember the feather. It is a reminder that while we cannot change the past, we can choose how we respond to it. You may have to forgive again and again, but with each act, you will find freedom and joy. As Jesus spoke, the disciples felt a deeper understanding settle within them. They recognized that forgiveness was not a one-time event but a continuous journey of the heart. They embraced the idea that their efforts could inspire others, creating a cycle of healing within their communities. From that day forward, the feather became a symbol not just for the disciples but for the entire region. People would find feathers drifting through the air, and it became a tradition to pause, reflect, and think of someone they needed to forgive. These moments ignited conversations, mended relationships, and transformed hearts. As news of the disciples' teaching spread, they attracted followers eager to learn about forgiveness. Families began to gather to share their struggles, and communities organized gatherings to discuss the importance of compassion and understanding. The message of forgiveness rippled through the towns, transforming lives and fostering connections. One day, while teaching in a nearby village, Jesus spoke of the deeper implications of forgiveness. When we choose to forgive, we create space for love, understanding, and growth. It is in this space that we can connect with others on a deeper level, fostering a sense of belonging and unity. In a world where conflict often reigns, forgiveness is the antidote. As the villagers listened, their hearts began to shift. They began to share their stories of hurt, betrayal, and misunderstanding, and slowly but surely they began to forgive one another. As weeks turned into months, the impact of the feather of forgiveness grew stronger. Those who had long carried the burdens of resentment began to release their pain. Families reunited, friendships were rekindled, and communities transformed into places of understanding and compassion. Miriam and James took it upon themselves to lead workshops, teaching others about the art of forgiveness. They invited members of the community to share their stories and participate in healing exercises. The workshops became a safe space for individuals to explore their feelings, confront their fears, and learn the tools necessary to forgive. One evening, as the sun set over the horizon, the village gathered for a community festival celebrating forgiveness. Laughter filled the air as families reunited, friendships blossomed, and stories of redemption were shared. In the center of the gathering stood a large tree adorned with colorful feathers, each representing a story of forgiveness and a commitment to let go of past hurts. As Jesus observed the joy around him, he knew the impact of their efforts would resonate for generations. The feather had become a beacon of hope, a reminder that forgiveness is not a weakness but a source of strength and liberation. As the festival continued, Jesus took a moment to address the crowd. "Dear friends, let this feather remind you that forgiveness is a gift we can give ourselves and one another. Each act of forgiveness is a step towards healing, a way to reclaim joy and live fully in the present. Embrace this journey with open hearts and share the message far and wide." The crowd erupted in applause, their spirits lifted by his words. They recognized the power of forgiveness not only in their lives but in the lives of those they would encounter moving forward. They were eager to carry the message of hope beyond their village, spreading compassion and understanding throughout the land. As night fell and stars twinkled above, the villagers released their own feathers into the sky. The sight of them floating gently away symbolized their commitment to let go of the past and embrace a future filled with love and connection. In the days that followed, the disciples traveled from village to village, sharing the story of the feather and the lessons they had learned from Jesus. Their message resonated deeply, creating a movement centered around compassion and understanding. Everywhere they went, they witnessed the transformative power of forgiveness. People began to mend relationships, heal old wounds, and build bridges of understanding that had long been broken. One day, as they traveled through a particularly troubled region, they encountered a group of people embroiled in conflict. Disputes had torn families apart, and resentment filled the air. The disciples knew they had to intervene. Gathering the community together, they shared the story of the feather, its lightness and freedom becoming a powerful metaphor for the people. They encouraged each person to reflect on their grievances and consider who they needed to forgive. It was not an easy process and tensions were high. However, with Jesus' guidance and the disciples' unwavering support, individuals began to open up, share their stories, and express their pain. Slowly, as they acknowledged their hurt, they also recognized the shared humanity in one another. A powerful moment occurred when a young woman, burdened by grief over the loss of her father due to a long-standing feud, stepped forward. "I don't know how to forgive," she said, tears streaming down her face. I feel so much anger towards those who took him from me." The crowd fell silent, feeling the weight of her pain. Jesus stepped forward, his voice calm and soothing. "Forgiveness is not forgetting the past, dear sister. It is about freeing yourself from the pain that holds you captive. It is a gift you give yourself. When you forgive, you can honor your father's memory without the burden of anger." The young woman took a deep breath, contemplating his words. With trembling hands, she shared her father's story, recounting the love and joy he had brought into her life. As she spoke, the anger began to dissolve, replaced by fond memories and gratitude. Finally, she looked around at those who had wronged her family. "I choose to forgive you. I want to honor my father by letting go of this anger." The crowd erupted in applause, tears of healing filling their eyes. One by one, others began to share their stories, and the atmosphere shifted from one of hostility to one of understanding and connection. As they embraced one another, the air was filled with a sense of liberation and hope. From that day forward, the community committed to living the values of forgiveness and compassion. They gathered regularly to share their struggles, support one another, and celebrate their victories. Their transformation became a powerful example for neighboring villages, inspiring a movement of forgiveness that spread far and wide. As the disciples continued their journey, they encountered countless stories of transformation. They witnessed how forgiveness could heal broken families, mend friendships, and foster unity in communities that had long been divided. One evening, as they gathered under the stars, Jesus looked at his disciples and said, "You have become instruments of peace, sowing seeds of forgiveness wherever you go. Remember, each act of kindness and understanding has the power to change hearts and minds." The disciples nodded, knowing they had embarked on a mission greater than themselves. They had witnessed the profound impact of forgiveness, and they were determined to continue spreading this message. As they traveled, they would often find feathers along their path, each one a reminder of the lessons learned and the lives touched. They began collecting these feathers, weaving them into a tapestry of stories, symbolizing the beauty that emerged from their journey of forgiveness. With each village they visited, they shared their tapestry, recounting the tales of transformation and the hope that forgiveness can bring. People listened intently, inspired to embrace the power of forgiveness in their own lives. Years passed, and the movement of forgiveness grew, reaching even the furthest corners of the land. The once burdened hearts of many were now filled with love and light, echoing the wisdom that Jesus had imparted. Finally, as the seasons changed and the world continued to turn, the disciples gathered for one last time under the olive tree where it all began. They reflected on their journey, the countless lives touched, and the message of forgiveness that had become their life's work. With tears of joy in their eyes, they shared their gratitude for one another and the impact they had made. Jesus smiled, knowing that the seeds of forgiveness had been sown deeply, taking root in the hearts of many. As they released their final feather into the sky, they whispered their hopes and dreams for the future. A future filled with love, compassion, and the unwavering belief that forgiveness has the power to change the world. And so, the legacy of the feather continued, a symbol of hope and healing for generations to come. The teachings of Jesus echoed through time, reminding all who heard them that forgiveness is not just a gift, it is the very essence of love. The disciples had become true messengers of that love, forever transformed by the lightness of the feather and the freedom it brought. This is end of the story. Comment Amen if you believe in Jesus' blessings. Please like this video and subscribe this channel for more Jesus story like this.